All right, welcome to today's Explainer, everyone. Today we are unpacking something absolutely massive, a highly concentrated blueprint for the future of AI data compensation. It's called the Codatta Blueprint for AI Data Royalties. For the longest time, the whole conversation around AI has been totally fixated on the models, right? How smart they are, what crazy things they can generate. But this blueprint, it completely flips the camera around. It focuses entirely on the fuel that powers those models, the data, and more importantly, the people behind that data. So if you've ever wondered how everyday internet users, like us, actually fit into the financial ecosystem of artificial intelligence, well, this is exactly what we're mapping out today. We've got a super clear framework to dive into, so let's just get right to it.
The source material kicks off with a provocation that honestly does not pull any punches. It asks, are you ready to get paid fairly every time your data trains a model? Now think about the phrasing there for a second. It leans really heavily into the word you. It's establishing the personal stakes right out of the gate. We're not talking about some abstract, high-level corporate data licensing theory here. No, this is about your direct contribution. And honestly, that word fairly is doing a ton of heavy lifting too. By asking if you're ready to be paid fairly, it's pretty much pointing out the elephant in the room. Up until now, the system just hasn't been fair. Your data goes into these massive models, tons of value is generated, but the compensation, it hasn't exactly been flowing back to the source. So this question really sets the stage for a totally new paradigm, moving us away from passive data extraction and right into active, fair compensation.
And that leads us right into this absolutely crucial promise. It says for AI data contributors, every single dollar now traces straight back to you. Let's just unpack the implications of that for a minute. In the past, if you contributed data, it basically just vanished into this vast ocean. Sure, value might be created somewhere downstream, but any actual dollars generated, they were completely lost in the current. What Codatta is establishing here is absolute, unbroken traceability. We're talking every single dollar, not some tiny percentage of a massive pool, not a vague back-of-the-napkin estimate, a direct one-to-one line. For the everyday internet user who's previously seen exactly zero financial return for their digital footprint, this is literally a game changer. It means the entire system is designed from the ground up to recognize where the value actually originated and then route the financial reward right back to that exact spot.
Now, to really appreciate this, we have to look at why the old system was just so incredibly frustrating. On one hand, you had the old standard, retroactive edits, and shady black box math. Talk about the injustice of the past, right? You contribute your data, but then the rules somehow get changed backward in time to cut you out. Or even worse, the black box math, where you have absolutely zero idea how a platform is calculating what your data is actually worth. You basically just have to blindly trust a system that deliberately hides its own math. It's opaque, it's obscured, and fundamentally, it's just unfair. But then we pivot over to Codatta's transparent solution. Instead of retroactive edits, we have changes logged. Everything is right out in the open. And instead of that shady math, we get payouts auto-recomputed. It's dynamic, it's strictly mathematical, and most importantly, it's visible. It drags the power out of the shadows and puts it into a logical, transparent system.
Okay, so how do we actually make this a reality? Let's take a look at the core pipeline, tracking your data assets. This is the exact process that makes this entire royalty system possible.
All right, so this four-step pipeline is really the engine of the entire blueprint. Let's walk through exactly how your data converts into actual dollars. Step one is the dataset version. This is super critical because, as we know, AI models are constantly evolving. By versioning the dataset, the system takes a highly precise snapshot in time so it knows exactly what data existed and in what state. Then step two, assets. This is your tangible contribution, the specific data points, the files, the raw information you're actually providing. Next up, we hit step three, which is the contribution fingerprint. Think of this as the undeniable, unforgeable digital proof of your asset. And finally, step four, your wallet, the ultimate destination. Just notice how perfectly linear and logical this is. You go from the massive, broad dataset straight down to your specific asset, stamped with your unique fingerprint, and it leads directly into your wallet. No weird detours, no middlemen taking a cut.
Actually, let's zoom in a bit closer on that crucial third step, the contribution fingerprint. By definition, this is the mechanism linking your specific data assets directly to your wallet. Now, why is this so absolutely vital? Because honestly, without this fingerprint, the whole pipeline just falls apart. The fingerprint is the pivotal technological bridge that actually makes this fair share framework a reality. It's the exact piece of tech that ensures when an AI model uses a dataset, it can ping the precise origin of every single asset inside it. Remember that massive promise we talked about earlier that every single dollar traces straight back to you? Well, the fingerprint is the tracer. It guarantees that your specific data assets literally cannot be separated from your identity as the creator and the rightful owner of that value.
Of course, a pipeline is really only as good as the rules that govern it, right? So let's shift our focus over to the strict systemic rules designed to protect you, the data contributor. We're talking about the transparency guarantee.
Here are those exact guarantees laid out super clearly as strict system rules. And just look at how definitive these are. First up, no retroactive edits. Once your data is in the system and versioned, history cannot be mysteriously rewritten to cut you out of the deal, period. Second, no shady black box math. The calculations for your royalties are completely open and understandable. You actually know how you're getting paid. And third, change is logged. Every single modification to the system or the data set leaves a crystal clear trail. And because of that trail, if an update happens, the system just automatically recalculates the math based on those transparent rules, ensuring your compensation is always accurate and completely up to date. This list right here, it completely destroys that old black box standard. It is basically an ironclad contract for transparency.
Ultimately, all of this brings us to what I think is the most definitive statement from the entire blueprint. This is how AI royalties should actually work. It's such a powerful summary of everything we've just covered, and it brings this whole problem-solution narrative to a really satisfying, empowering peak. We started by looking at the injustice of the old black box math. Then we broke down the exact mechanics of that four-step tracking pipeline. And finally, we looked at those strict systemic guarantees of transparency. When you snap all those puzzle pieces together, it stops being just some cool theoretical concept and becomes a concrete, workable standard. It totally shifts the conversation from, hey, I hope we get paid someday, to here is the exact structural standard for how this compensation must flow.
Which leads us directly to the final call to action laid out in the source material. Join Codatta's royalty engine now. We've walked through the whole framework today, from the high-level philosophy of fair pay right down to the nitty-gritty technical fingerprints and transparency guarantees. The blueprint is clearly drawn out for us. But before we wrap up today's explainer, I want to leave you with something to really chew on. Now that you've seen the exact pipeline of how your data can be quantified, tracked, and finally compensated without any of that shady math or hidden rules, what is the true, untapped value of your own digital footprint? The one that's sitting out there right now just waiting for a fair system to actually recognize it. Think about that. Thanks so much for joining me today, and keep learning.